Hello, and welcome to Mitchell Consulting's webinar series for our Mitchell University. Today we're going to talk about SAP Business One and the sales order process. This webinar will be recorded and will be available on our website at www.mitchellgroup.com. So again, today we're going to talk about SAP Business One and the sales order process. For purposes of this demo, we're going to be going through the process by starting with a sales quotation. Then we're going to take the sales quotation and move it into a sales order. From the sales order, we're going to create a delivery. We're going to return some of the merchandise. We're then going to create our AR invoice and our credit memo. And again, you do not have to go through this entire process. SAP Business One allows you to start at any document. You can also, for example, go to a sales quote and take it directly to a delivery or an AR invoice, or start with a sales order and take it to an AR invoice. Again, for purposes of this presentation, we'll be going through the process. A few other things that we'll talk about, but we won't go into detail today. We'll cover these in other Mitchell University series, is the AR down payment invoice. The AR down payment invoice allows us to take a deposit on an order, and then when the order is paid, we can take the deposit off. We'll also be looking at the AR invoice plus payment. This is an over-the-counter way of just going directly to a one particular customer, like a cash sale. And then the other stuff we'll just, again, discuss the recurring transactions and templates. You can actually create documents to set up as recurring bills. So we can see real quick, let's look at the AR plus payment. You can see when we go in, we have it set to go to one specific customer. We cannot change this customer. We can go in and enter information. If we want to enter information about the customer, we can type it in here. So this is really for an over-the-counter type sale. Just wanted to show you that, but we won't be discussing that as part of our flow today. So let's start with the sales quotation. So also in SAP Business One, all the screens do look the same, so it makes it easier for the user. You can see that we have a contents tab for entering the items. We have a logistics tab for entering shipping information. We have an accounting tab and an attachment. And you can see if we open up a sales order, you can see that the screens look the same. So let's begin. We're going to do a simple quote. I'm going to go here. Again, we have our header information. We can see the business partner coming up. As we know from working with SAP Business One, we have the drill down, the links, what we know as the orange arrows or golden arrows. We can click here. This will take us into the actual business partner to see where the data is coming from. You can see here the contact person. Bob is a default contact person. You can see that comes up here. Again, we can change the contact person if we wish. We can enter a customer reference number. We can also charge our type of currency. Again, for demonstration purposes, we'll just be dealing with US dollars, but we can use local currencies and business partner currencies. We see here our sales quotation number. This is number 264. The status is open. The sales quotation will stay open until all the lines have been moved to another document. Once they're moved, the sales quotation will be closed. You have the option in SAP Business One to set that if a sales quotation is closed, you can still use it again to create another sales order. We have our posting date, our valid until date, and our document date. Again, these can be set up in the document settings. So you can see here we have this quote is valid for 30 days. And then we have our document date. So let's begin. Let's do a simple one. We're going to go and we're going to select some items. We're going to select these 3 items. And we're going to change the quantity. We're going to put 10. So let's go here so we can see our items. Again, we know from SAP Business One that if we want to change what we see in the screen, we can always go to our form settings. We have the table format. This is what we see in the box, so we can make things visible. and active or just visible. So you can see here the description is visible but not active. So that's why you can see it's grayed out. I don't have access to change the description. I do have access to the items and the quantities. So again, you can set this up. The row format has the same information as the table format, but the row would be the details. So for example, if we go here and we open up some more options, I'm going to click OK. So if we were to double click on the line item, we would get the row format. So you can see the information. The advantage of this is that the fields that you normally use on a daily basis, you want to keep in the box here to keep your marketing documents clean and easy to work with. But there are times you may have to go into a freight distribution or one of these tables or fields every now and then, so you can put them on the detail. So again, you can have access to the fields here if you wish. So we see here we have our information. We have our quantity, our open quantity, our pricing, and so on. So it's going to go ahead and we're going to add this quotation. We're going to call it back up. We have the information here. Now, a little bit about the process flow in SAP. This is for the sales orders as well as the purchase orders. There are two ways to move the documents within SAP, the relationship of the documents. We can do a copy to, which is a one-to-one relationship. So when we do a copy to, as you see here, we're moving the document up the chain. So we can take a quotation and we can copy it to a sales order. We can take a sales order and copy it to a delivery, and so on. So we're going from what's referred to as the base document here, and we're copying it to the target document. The other way of doing it is pulling the document along. So we can actually, instead of going from the base document and going into the target document, we can start from the target document and copy from the base. And we'll go through both examples today in our demonstration. So let's do a simple one, and let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the two. If you do a copy to, like I said, this is a one-to-one relationship. So in this case, we're going to copy to a sales order. As we discussed before, you can skip the process. We can copy a quote directly to delivery, or we can take a quote and do it directly to an AR invoice. So we're going to copy it to a sales order. So what's happening now is, again, the one-to-one relationship, we're copying one sales quotation to one sales order. And again, you can see the information here. So the advantage of this is that it's going to bring everything from the sales quotation to the order. So in the case of all lines are being shipped, and you want to go ahead and bring everything over at one time, you can do it this way. You can still make adjustments. You can still change the quantity. So in this case, we're going to, of the quote, instead of 10, they want 5. This one, instead of the 10, they want 7. And we don't want this line at all, so we can right-click and we can delete the row. So we see here we have our information. We can see the base document. Sales order 297 is coming from the sales quotation 264. Let's add that. Let's close and go back in to refresh our screen. Let's go to the sales quotation. And we can see here our sales quotation is still open. We can see here of this line, the quantity was 10. The open quantity or the back order quantity remaining is 5, because 5 went to the target document, which was sales order 297. The original quantity was 10. We shipped 7, so we have a back order quantity of 3, and we have a sales order 297. And this one is still open. SAP allows you a little flexibility of changing the name. So for example, if we want to refer to this as the back order quantity versus the open quantity, we can simply hold our control key down. We can double click, and we're going to rename this the back order quantity. Again, all the functionality I'm showing you today is controlled with authorizations. The user I have right now has full authorizations in SAP to make all these changes. You can block this type of change with the authorizations. So once you set up your forms and your headings, you may not want anybody to change it, so you can set that up. So again, we can see here in our target document. So we did a simple, we took a sales order and we copied it to a sales quotation, and we copied it to a sales order. So now let's enter another sales quotation. We're going to choose the same client. Let's pick these three. Change our quantity. We're going to go ahead and add that sales quotation. So to recap, what I've done is I started with a sales quotation, and one of the ways I can move this along the line, I can do a copy to the target document. Again, I'm starting from what's known as my base document, which is the sales quote, and I'm going to the target document. So this is the one-to-one relationship. But there are times that I want to make consolidations. I want to merge maybe two quotations into one sales orders. I want to take certain lines, so I want to do a lot of editing to do that. What I can do then is I can use the copy from process. So what I would do, in this case, I would go to my target document. So my target document is going to be the sales order. Again, I would have to put my customer or my client in. And now I have the ability of doing a copy from. So what I'm doing is I'm in the target document, and I'm copying from the base document. So when I open this here, I have my base document of the sales quotations. The advantage of this screen allows me to pull from several quotations. And we'll see this in the other documents too. Sometimes I may have 3 or 4 sales orders and I want to consolidate a delivery ticket. I can do the same. So we're going to grab these two. Just going to hold our shift down. We're going to select these two. At this point now, we're in the document draw wizard. This allows us to do some information. The top deals with the exchange rates. And if we're dealing with foreign currency, we can determine the exchange rates we want to use for base documents or based on the rate tables. And we have some information here. If we select draw all data, what we're going to do is we're going to bring everything over, like the copy to, so we would go directly into a finish mode. So here we want to do customize. When we select customize, you'll see that the button changes to next. So if we do draw all data, we're just bringing everything in, just like the copy to. If we select customize, now we have the ability of making some changes. So again, we can see the lines we want, so we can simply go here and we can just let's highlight everything. And let's say we want to do 8 of these. We want to do all 10 of those. We want to do 3 of these. We want to do, let's say, 10. Here we want to do 15. And we don't want the last line. So then all we need to do now is highlight our lines by using the Shift or Control method. We can highlight our lines. We can click Finish. And you can see the lines came in. So the copy from gives us a flexibility of making changes like that, as opposed to bringing all the line items in and having to right-click and delete the rows. So they all came in. I have it all one screen, nice to see, and I can see everything here. Again, we can see our quantities in our sales order. We can see where it's coming from. These came from quotation 264. These came from quotation 265. We have our quantity. Let's go add our open quantity. We want to be able to see it. We're going to grab that. We're going to drag it. Just going to drop it here. Again, the flexibility of changing the form settings on the screen. Now we can see here that we have everything on the line. We add our delivery date. Let's just put today's date. And we add. back and take a look at what we have, and we can see here that this sales order, in the remarks, it came from two base documents. It came from sales quotation 264, sales quotation 265. Again, we have the flexibility of looking at the lines here to see what the information is. We also have a nice feature in SAP version 8.8 that we're using, a new feature which makes it nice to see all this, because instead of having to open all the documents, I can do a right-click and I can look at the relationship map, and I have everything here. So you can see the business partners that were involved. You can see that this is sales quotations. We have two of them. This first one, 264, you can see that from our first demonstration, we did a copy to sales order 297. And in our second demonstration, we took these two quotes, 264 and 265, and we moved them into this sales order. So we'll watch this relationship map build as we go along. Let's add to that. Let's actually have a sales order. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the logistics tab, and we're going to create a procurement document. What this is going to allow us to do is create a purchase order. Again, we discussed, we have our contents tab, which is the information. We have our logistics, which is our shipping information. In SAP Business One, we can create multiple ship tos and bill tos. We have our accounting tab. This is information about the payment terms that are coming from the business partner. We also have attachment tab. This allows us to add attachments from outside of SAP Business One. Certain technical documents that we need to add and so on, we can browse our system and we can add the information. So let's go here and let's go to the procurement process. Let's click Update. So what's happening here now, we have our procurement process wizard. And the procurement process is covered in detail in one of our other webinar series. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to scroll through this. We can see here the order we're dealing with. We have some options here. We can create purchase quotations. We can create purchase orders. And if we're dealing with production, we can create production orders. Again, this is covered in detail and in one of our other Mitchell University sessions. So we're just going to create a purchase order real quick. Scroll through. And we have a purchase order. Again, dealing with SAP 8.8 version, the relationship map we see here now includes everything. One of the problems in the older versions of SAP is that this base and target document, you would lose the purchase order link to it. You can see here we have a sales order, and if we click here, in the standard SAP, we have our base document. And if we click here, we're back to our target document, but we've lost the link to the purchase order. Now with the relationship map, we can see what we've done. So you can see here that this sales order created 3 purchase orders. So again, we're building our map, and now we see the business partners involved because we have the customer for the sales order, and we have our 3 vendors for our different information. We can also talk about the AR down payment invoice. We can actually do a AR down payment or a deposit. So for example, let's say we have this sales order and we require a deposit in order to proceed. We can click on the payment means. We're going to enter our information, and we're going to take a deposit of, say, $1,000. Click Update. So now let's go out and let's look at what we've done. So we see our sales order here based on our quotations. going to take out our discount. We can go to our payment means. We're going to go ahead here, enter our deposit. You can see that it's linked to a procurement document, a purchase order. We want to continue yes. So we're going to cancel. We're going to call it back up. Update our changes. We're going to right-click. We're going to look at the relationship map. And again, we can see all the information based on the system. So again, what we've discussed is the sales quotation. We've taken a sales quotation and we brought it into a sales order. So now we want to do some deliveries. So let's actually create another sales order. We can use that link again. So let's create, let's take these two items. Leave it at that. I'm going to put our delivery date today. I'm going to add that. So we'll do the same thing. So we took our sales order, which was our base document. We want to now bring it into a delivery. So we're going to do the same copy from. So we're going to go to our target document, which will be the delivery ticket. We're going to put our customer. And we have our copy from, our sales orders. Again, you can see all the sales orders related to this one. We're going to take the last three here. So we're going to consolidate. We're going to go to our customize. In this case, we're just going to grab everything. So we're going to go ahead here and grab everything. And we're going to add our delivery. Now, one thing we want to talk about when we do add the delivery, we'll see here that we're going to get this message that you cannot change this document after it's been added. That's because the delivery is going to affect our inventory quantities. It's going to reduce the inventory quantity out of the system. It's also going to make an effect to general ledger. So we're going to say yes. We're going to add that. Let's call it back up. And let's see what that means. So again, we have our delivery here, which is open. We can see here we have our base, where it came from. It came from these sales orders, all 3 sales orders. So now if we go here to accounting delivery, you'll see here that we don't have in stock. What we have committed actually made an effect to the system. Same thing. Let's just now call up the. So let's take this. Let's do a copy to an AR invoice. We're going to go ahead and we're going to invoice everything here. You can see it's open, so we're just going to add this. Again, we can't change the document after it's done. So let's close these documents. Go to the AR invoice. Again, we see our AR invoice. We have all the information here on our AR invoice. We can see where it's coming from. Okay, we can see the AR invoice is open because the balance due is still here. And if we right-click and look at our relationship map, again, we can follow the flow. Our open AR invoice, which came from a delivery, and so on. The relationship map is really nice. It allows us to give us a snapshot of everything related to the flow. So you can see here, if we look at our sales order, we can see that we actually started with quotations. So we started with these quotations, these 2 quotations. Pulled into the sales order. Then we can see that this quotation, the sales order here, is pulled in with this one. So this sales quotation went to sales order 297 and 298. And you can see sales order 297 was pulled into the delivery along with sales order 298 and sales order 299. You can see that sales order 298 created 3 purchase orders. And you can see that the delivery created 1 return and created the AR invoice. So let's repeat that. Let's see what we talked about. Again, we went through our flow of a quotation. In SAP Business One, we can enter a quotation. A quotation does not affect the inventory, does not affect the general ledger or any historical data. It's just a quotation. The quotation can be turned into a sales order. The sales order will affect the quantity committed. It will not affect the in-stock quantity and will not affect general ledger. We can then create a delivery. A delivery will affect the inventory. It will reduce the quantity on stock or the quantity on hand and will make a journal entry affecting the inventory and cost of sales accounts. You can then do a return. The return will bring the merchandise back into the inventory. It'll be the reversal of the delivery ticket. You can then, from the delivery, create the AR invoice. And the final step would be to create an AR credit. So if we wanted to credit one of the lines, we would do the same thing. We do an AR credit. We would call up our customer. Let's do our copy from an AR invoice. Take the last one. Let's just do that line there. Okay, again, we have some exchange rates in there. Just letting us know. So if we go to the AR invoice, and we see here, and we look at our relationship map, again, we can see now the AR credit. The AR credit is closed. It's linked to the AR invoice. You can see the amount applied. The AR invoice has the applied amount, so the balance due has gone down. Now, there's another step here called a reserve invoice. So let's talk about what that one is here. So what we can do is we can create what's known as an AR reserve. Let's just go to my form settings. Open up the reserve. Documentation generation wizard. Reserve. The reserve invoice allows you to create the AP invoice, the AR invoice first and do the delivery second. So this is like a prepay. In the example we gave, we started with, in this case, the sales orders, sales quotes. We turned them into sales orders. We did delivery. The deliveries affected the inventory quantity. It removed the quantity and did the corresponding general ledger to the inventory and cost of sales. And then we created the AR invoice, which completed the process. The AR invoice then affected general ledger from the sales and the customer standpoint. So we completed the process. We've debited the AR, the customer, and we've credited the corresponding sales tax and sales revenue. What we have the ability of doing is doing an AR reserve invoice. The AR reserve invoice will do the invoice first and do the delivery second. So let's take a look at that. Let's create a new sales order. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this. Let's call it back up. Again, we have a sales order. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy this to a reserve invoice. The reserve invoice is going to do the invoice part first and do the delivery second. So let's go here and look at this item real quick. We can see that we have 1,760 in stock. We're going to add this AR reserve invoice. Again, we can't make a change to it because we're affecting the inventory. We're affecting our general ledger and our sales. So now if we look at this reserve invoice, we can see that the quantity did not change. And if we look at the effect of general ledger, we have affected the business partner, or the AR, and the corresponding sales revenue. So we've just done the process in reverse. Instead of creating a sales order, and then from the sales order delivering the merchandise, which would reduce the quantity on hand, and then creating the invoice, we did the invoice first. We did a prepay. So we did an AR reserve invoice. Now it shows up in the business partner's account, but we haven't shipped the merchandise. Once we're ready to ship, maybe that the customer required payment in full or some type of payment before we can release the goods. At that point, we can go in and we can run that. We can also see that on the reports. So if we go to our open items list, we can look at right here, AR reserves unpaid and AR reserves not yet delivered. So if we look at the AR reserves unpaid, we're going to see the one we just did. And if we look at AR reserve invoices not yet delivered, we're going to see the two. And this is because of the process. Typically, an AR reserve invoice is done first because we want to get some type of payment. Once we've paid it, then we can go ahead and create the delivery. For purposes of this demo, we're just going to go ahead and do the delivery. So I'm going to call up our AR reserve invoice. And now we do copy to. We can do a credit memo, but we're just going to go ahead and do the delivery. So now when we do the delivery, we complete the process. So again, if we look at the AR reserve invoice, we do a right click and look at the relationship map. You can see we went from a sales order to the reserve invoice to the delivery. And again, we can see here, you can see that the AR reserve invoice is delivered. So now if we look at our reports, AR reserve invoice not yet delivered. We don't see anything because we delivered it, but it still has not been paid. So we can see it there. The other thing we can do now, we've been doing this process manually. As you can tell, we've been going through and we've been selecting the invoices we want. We can actually do this on a global scale. We can do the document generation wizard. So we can go here. We can create a new parameter if you want, or we can use an existing one. We can create a new one. We can go in here, we can give it a name if we wish. So now we're going to talk about our target document. So in this case here, we want to create deliveries. We consolidate our deliveries. We can look at our posting dates and so on. Again, we can deal with our exchange rates. We can also create a draft. What a draft will do is not actually create the delivery. It'll create it into a temporary state. Because again, once we run this program, we're going to actually create all the deliveries. We want to make sure that we want to edit it first before we have any problems. So we're going to create a draft. We're going to go here, and we're going to say where we're coming from. We're going to come from our sales orders. So we can do some things. We can do specific dates. Typically, if I'm creating the the deliveries from the sales orders. I might want to take all the sales orders that were posted, let's say, yesterday. I can put some dates in here. I can also do the series of numbering series, and I can also do some sorting capabilities. I can add to these different fields. For purposes of this, we're just going to see what's in the system. So I'm going to click Next. And we can do a consolidation, so we can, or not consolidate. We can consolidate by the system defaults. So this way we have 2 or 3 sales orders for one business partner. We're going to put them together. I'm going to go here and we're going to add our customers. Let's just look at our earth shaker. Again, we could do it by customer groups and properties. We're going to click OK. We click Next. We have some options. If we find data that's missing, we can skip to the next document. We can skip to the next customer, or we can ask for confirmation. We'll stop in the process. We're just going to skip to the next document. We can do a few things. We can save the parameters and execute it, so we can keep a copy of it. We can save the parameters and exit here. That means we're just going to save the information, but we're not going to execute the program. And we could just execute without saving. We're just going to execute without saving. And again, it's telling you that once you run this, you can see that a couple of them failed because the data was different. But you can see that we created a draft document here. And we can create this one got consolidated with all that. So again, we finish this. We can go into our sales reports. Let's look at the document draft report. Let's look at, in this case, we're just going to look at deliveries. Open only. You can see here we created one big delivery. If we open up this delivery, we can see here all the lines we created. You can see it's in a draft mode, which means it hasn't been added yet. So if there's anything wrong with this, we can make any changes to it. What we can do is we just go ahead and click Add. We can go ahead and add the draft. Again, we have some negative quantities set. If we have parameters not to go negative, I'm not going to add that one. So the document generation wizard is a nice feature. Again, it allows me to do the process on a batch scale. This could be used for if you have a lot of sales orders. From yesterday, you want to create the invoices of the deliveries today. You can go back and select and pick and choose, and you can consolidate. So again, let's recap what we've gone over today. We've gone over the SAP Business One version 8.8 sales order process. We've looked at the different types of marketing documents in the sales order. We started off with a sales order quote. Again, this allows us to enter information, does not affect the inventory or the general ledger. It doesn't commit anything. It's just a quote in the system. We can then take that quote. We can turn it into an order. At that point, we've committed the inventory. We haven't reduced the quantity in stock. Since we've only committed and affected our available, we haven't affected any general ledger. So the document's not added. That means we can make any changes to it if we want. The next step would go from the sales order to the delivery. This allows us to then actually create the delivery ticket. At this point, we're going to actually remove the quantity from the inventory, so we're going to reduce our quantity in stock. And because we're reducing our quantity in stock, we're going to affect the general ledger from the inventory and cost of sales perspective. If anything is wrong with the delivery, we can return it back to stock. The return will just reverse the delivery. It'll put the merchandise back in stock. It'll go ahead and reverse the effect in general ledger for the inventory and cost of sales account. We can do it AR down payment invoice, which is a deposit. So we can take a deposit on, say, a sales order if we wish for special items. The AR invoice, at this point, we're completing the cycle. The AR invoice is going to affect the AR account. It's going to affect the business partner's aging, and it's going to affect the sales. So the inventory and cost of sales were affected during the delivery. The AR and sales side are affected during the AR invoice. The AR invoice plus payment just allows us to hard code the AR invoice to one specific customer. This would be like a cash or counter customer that we don't really care about the information. We just want to go ahead, go right to the lines and sell. We have an AR credit memo. An AR credit memo will reverse the AR invoice. Very important is that when you have a delivery, the delivery can be returned. But once the delivery is created into an AR invoice and there's a problem with the merchandise, you have to do the credit memo because the AR invoice has affected the customer and the aging side as well as the sales. So the credit memo will actually reverse everything. The credit memo will, again, give a credit to the customer, affect the sales and the AR, and also affect the inventory and cost of sales altogether. The reserve invoice allows us to change that process around. Instead of going from a sales order to a delivery to an invoice, we can go from a sales order to a reserve invoice and then the delivery. This is typically used for prepayment purposes. What we're doing is we want to create the AR invoice. We want to get it on the books of the customer. We want it on the aging. We want it as part of his statement. And then once he pays us, we can then release the merchandise and deliver it. So we can do the process flow backwards. We can also use the document generation wizard. This allows us to do what we're doing, but instead of doing it manually, we're doing it on a batch processing scale. So we can use our document generation wizard. We can determine our target document and what base documents we're pulling. So we can do the process in a batch form. Again, when we talk about the target and base, the base is where you're coming from, and the target is where you're going. So in this case, sales quotation is the base document. Right? When that is turned into a sales order, the sales order is the target document, and the base document would be the sales quotation. When we go to the delivery, the sales order would have a base document of a quote, and the target document of the sales order would be the delivery. The delivery's base document would be the sales orders, and the delivery's target document was the return. Also, the target document of the delivery would be the AR invoice, and so on. So we can go up and down the line that way. We can do one of two ways. We can do a copy to, which is a one-to-one relationship where we're taking a document and we're moving it up the chain. So we can take a one sales order and copy it to a sales order. We can take the sales order and copy it to the delivery. So we're working our way through the process. We can also do the copy from. The copy from allows us to go from the target and pull from the base. So we would go to the target first, which is a sales order, and we would copy from the base, which is a quote. Advantages of the copy from, it allows us to consolidate. We can pick several lines from several different base documents, as opposed to the copy to, which is I'm looking at one quote and copying it to one sales order. And again, you can see when we open up the links internal down here, which is reflected in our relationship map. This is a new functionality in version 8.8. We can go here, and at a glance, we can see everything going on. So in the example we did today, we can see the business partners involved. We had one customer and 3 vendors. We can see where we're starting from, and we can follow our chain. We can also do it here. We're looking at the documents. We can also do it from the posting details. Okay, if you want to look at the effects of the journal entries and the internal reconciliation. We can also do it from the related items. You can see here. We look at the documents involved. Again, we can see the information. So you can see here where we're going from. So we have our starting. We can see here that we have our sales quotations, which are our base, and you can see how we move these into our targets. So in this case, the sales orders base was the quotation. The sales order's target was a delivery. Same here. The delivery's base was the sales, and the delivery's target was the AR invoice. The AR invoice's base was a delivery, and the target was a credit. And you can see that when you open up the documents. If you wish, you can add that to the line. You can see here that this delivery, the target was the AR invoice, and the base was the sales orders. So to conclude, that is the SAP Business One sales order flow. And again, for purposes of the demo, we went through the entire flow. We don't have to do that. We can start at any document in the chain. We can start at a sales order and just copy to an AR invoice and be done. Or we can just start. We can only just do AR invoices if we want. Once again, that concludes our webinar today on SAP Business One sales order process. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website, so visit us at www.mitchellgroup.com. And we thank you for your time.